Today I'm going to show you how to make this wonderful loaf of cinnamon bread in the bread machine. Just look at that beautiful swirl on the inside. It's like a giant cinnamon bun. That is absolutely fabulous. You're going to need 3 cups of bread flour, 1 egg, 2 1/4 teaspoon of active dry yeast, 1/4 of a cup of dry potato flakes, 1/3 cup of white sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt, 4 tablespoons of butter, a 1/2 cup of milk, and about a cup of water. I'll show you how we're going to measure the water here in a moment. And then for our cinnamon swirl, you're going to need 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1/3 of a cup of brown sugar, and 2 tablespoons of butter. We're going to set these ingredients aside because we'll use those to make our swirl here after the bread gets to that point. We're going to oil this little stem inside the pan that holds the paddle. And the way I like to do that is just go ahead. In this case, I'm using butter. I'm just going to scoop a little bit of that butter onto my paddle. Put it down on there. First, we're going to measure up our liquids. So we have 1/4 of a cup here of dry potato flakes. You can use mashed potatoes if you want to like cook a potato and mash it up and use a regular potato. These are, when you're buying your instant potato flakes, make sure the ingredients only say potatoes. Don't buy the kind that have all the additives in them. You just want, and these are just dehydrated potato flakes is all this is. It's just a potato. It's been mashed out and dehydrated and then crushed into flakes. And that's what you want. And we have 1/4 of a cup here. And although this is a dry ingredient, we're going to measure it with our wet ingredients. So we're going to go ahead and put our potato flakes into our 2-cup measuring cup. And then we're going to add our 1/2 cup of milk. And then we're going to stir that up a little. And you just want to give that a few seconds to absorb some of the water that helps us with the measuring. And now the next ingredient we're going to put in is our egg. And we're also going to count that as a liquid. So we're going to go ahead and put our egg into our milk and potato flakes. You can stir that up a little bit if you want to. So now I am at almost 1 cup. It's not quite at 1 cup, but it's just below the 1 cup, between 3/4 and 1 cup on my measuring cup. And what I want is, I want 1 1/3 cup of liquid. So I'm going to add enough water to bring this up to 1 1/3. And that is going to be my liquid for this recipe. I'm going to save this water because when the dough starts mixing, if it's too dry, then I will add some water. Whenever you're adding an enrichment like a potato flake or really any kind of enrichment, you really don't know how that is going to act when you add all your ingredients in your flour. You may end up with a drier dough or a wetter dough. So it's always good to have some liquid reserved. And of course, start out with the normal amount of flour, but you may have to add a tablespoon or 2 of flour. Usually I find when I'm adding an enrichment, if you measure it this way, if you have to add anything at all, it's usually a little bit of water. So we have our liquids here in our cup. I'm going to go ahead and pour that into my bread pan. Then I'm going to add my butter, which my milk was at room temperature, and so is this butter. This butter's been sitting out all night, so it is super soft. If you forgot to let your butter come to room temperature, you can definitely put it in the microwave and even melt it. It'll be just fine, but just make sure it's either melted or room temperature when you add it, so it'll mix up good. Now I'm going to add my teaspoon of vanilla and my salt and my sugar and my yeast. Now we don't have to proof this yeast. I know my yeast is good because I use it every day. Next, we're going to add in our 3 cups of bread flour. And we're just going to pour that right on top. Then we're going to put our pan into our bread machine. And this is the KBS bread machine. And this would be considered a 2-pound loaf that I'm making. Now that we have our pan and our bread machine, we're going to choose the menu option number 11, which is the raw dough cycle. If you don't have the KBS has raw dough cycle. If you don't have a raw dough cycle on your bread machine, it may only have a dough cycle, or I forget what some of the other cycles are called. And the difference is some of them only mix the dough, and some of them mix the dough and then kind of warm the machine for it to rise. And although I have noticed this machine gets a little warm on the raw dough cycle, it's just kneading is all that it does. So we're going to go down to menu option number 11. And it has 23 minutes on it here on the KBS machine. And we're going to hit start. And then in 3 or 4 minutes, we're going to come and check the dough ball and see if we need to add any liquid to it. Now, as you can see, this dough ball is very dry. Hopefully you can tell that here on the camera how dry this dough ball is. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add about a tablespoon of water. Then we're going to let it continue mixing. Our dough ball has been mixing for a couple of minutes and it is still too dry. And not only dry, but if I push on it and I feel of it, it's not as soft. You want it to be soft, but you still want it to hold a good dough ball. So I'm going to add another tablespoon of water. Then I'm going to let this go for another 3 or 4 minutes and it should be about right. Okay, I just want to show you what the dough ball looks like now, and you may have to add more or less water than I did. And when I push on the dough ball, it's softer, it's not hard. And it'll look even better when it finishes kneading some more, and I'll show you what it looks like right before it starts to rise. So our dough cycle has finished, and I just wanted to let you see what the dough ball looks like. It has wonderful texture. It's pulling away from the sides of the pan. Now we're going to let this sit here with the lid closed, and we're going to let it rise for about 30 or 40 minutes. It doesn't have to be exact. We're just going to let it rise, and then we will take it out and add the ingredients for the swirl and put it back. Our dough has been rising for about 30 minutes, and now we are ready to move on to the next step. So take it out of our bread machine, dust a little bit of flour here on our surface. Get that paddle out. And now we are going to just flatten out our dough ball that has risen so nice. And you just kind of want to flatten it out and shape it into somewhat of a rectangle. It does not have to be perfect. We just want to flatten it out. And mine is kind of more of a circle than it is a triangle, but that's okay. We're going to mix our cinnamon into our brown sugar. I'm just going to use a fork here and mix it in. Then we're going to take our 2 tablespoons of butter and we're just going to smear that all over the top of our little rectangle here. I know some people do like an egg wash, and some people add flour and different things to their brown sugar. But I think that takes away from the cinnamon swirl when you do all that. Okay, so now our hands are nice and messy, but we're not gonna worry about that. We're just gonna sprinkle our brown sugar and cinnamon on and spread it all around. Now I'm going to rinse my hands. Now we're going to roll our rectangle up, and that's what's going to give us that swirl in the middle of our bread. So I'm just going to start here on this side closest to me, kind of pull it toward me, and fold it over. Then I'm going to do that again. So I'm just going to get up under there, pull it kind of toward me, and fold it over. And I'm going to do this all the way to the end. And now I'm going to tuck the ends over like so, and we're going to put this back into our bread pan. So there we have our cinnamon raisin swirl dough back in our bread pan. Going to put it back in the machine, and we're going to go to the bake cycle. So we have our pan in the bread machine. We're going to go to menu option 14 on the KBS, which is our bake cycle. And you'll just have to find the bake cycle on your machine if it's not a KBS. And it defaults to 10 minutes, but we want to set this to about 50 minutes. And on the KBS, it's important to note that you have to hit start twice to get the bake to begin. When the bake light, the little bake word here on your screen is flashing, that means the bake is on. Okay, so our cinnamon swirl bread has been baking for 1 hour. I did add 10 minutes of bake time. When I checked it at 50 minutes, it was still not quite done. And so I added 10 more minutes of bake time. I'm going to turn the bread machine off, and it has risen up beautifully. Now we got to get it out. So just look how beautiful this is. So we're going to let this sit in the pan and cool for a few minutes so that it doesn't stick when we go to take it out of the pan, and then we'll let it finish cooling here on this wire rack. So we've allowed the bread to cool in the pan for a little while so that it won't stick, and if you give it a little shake, you can tell if it's loose or not. And I think it's pretty much loose, except there might be a few spots where it's stuck with the sugar. So we're just going to dump it out here and sit it here on our cooling rack and let it cool, and then we'll slice into it. Our bread is mostly cooled. It's still a little bit warm, but we're going to go ahead and slice into it. You want to let it cool a little bit before you slice into it. Otherwise, it'll just ruin the crumb on the inside. It'll turn all gummy, and it just changes the texture of the crumb if you don't allow the bread to cool before you slice into it. Just look at that beautiful swirl on the inside. Let's slice another piece. Just look at the beautiful design of your cinnamon swirl on the inside. And it's so soft. It's like a giant cinnamon bun. Okay guys, you know we can't go without tasting of this. I'm just going to cut off a small piece. We're going to put some butter on it, even though it's already full of butter. It's so soft. I wish you could feel of it. It is so soft. That is absolutely fabulous. I certainly hope you'll give this recipe a try. Please leave me a comment below and let me know if you tried this recipe. If you have not already, subscribe to the channel. When you like these kinds of videos, please consider subscribing. Hit the like button and share this video with your friends. God bless. Bye-bye.